When I moved to the countryside, my intention was to escape the hustle and bustle of the big city and find some peace. I was a graphic designer, and working remotely allowed me to live anywhere. I rented a simple house, located on a quiet street, surrounded by trees that seemed to whisper ancient secrets to the wind. The deep silence that dominated the place at night was exactly what I needed to reconnect with the creativity that urban chaos had drained from me. As soon as I settled in, I befriended Donna Celia, a kind lady who lived in the house next door. She was the living embodiment of local gossip and always knew everything about everyone's life. It was she who told me, on a lazy afternoon, about the house across the street. An old, crumbling building that seemed to have been forgotten by time. Mr. Antonio lived there, she said in a conspiratorial tone, as we drank coffee on my porch. He was a doll collector. A doll collector? I thought. I couldn't help but find it curious. I imagined an eccentric old man surrounded by porcelain dolls in a dark, dusty room. Donna Celia noticed my expression and, with a mischievous smile, continued. They say he made his own dolls. Some of them, it seems, even looked alive. But that was a long time ago. He died years ago, and no one has entered that house since. I didn't take what she said too seriously. Stories like this are common in small towns, always filled with mysteries and exaggerations. However, something about that story stuck in my head. Maybe it was the combination of mystery with the strange fascination I had always had for old things. That night, I watched Mr. Antonio's house from my bedroom window. Even in the dim light, it seemed immersed in a darkness even denser than the night around it. Closed windows, peeling walls, and a garden that had been completely swallowed by vegetation. A few days later, out of pure curiosity, and maybe a little boredom, I decided to explore the abandoned house. The gate was locked with a rusty chain, but with some force, I managed to open it. The garden was a labyrinth of weeds and twisted trees. When I finally reached the front door, I hesitated. A shiver ran down my spine, as if something inside me was warning me to turn back. But curiosity was stronger. I turned the doorknob, which, surprisingly, gave way easily, and the door opened with a low, prolonged creak. The smell that came from inside was of mold and rotting wood. My stomach churned, but I continued. The main room was covered in dust and cobwebs, with old furniture still in place. There were shelves on the walls, and on them, dolls, of all kinds. Some were porcelain, others cloth, but they all had one thing in common, a disturbing gaze, as if they were following me as I moved through the room. It was hard to describe, but those dolls seemed strangely real. Their features were too detailed. Their eyes gleamed in a way that made me want to leave immediately. However, something caught my attention at the back of the room. A large glass display case, almost hidden by shadows, contained a single doll. Unlike the others, this one was almost the size of a child, dressed in an old, dirty white dress. Her face was pale, with deep blue eyes that seemed to shine in the darkness. There was something deeply wrong about her. Maybe it was the fact that, for a brief second, I swore I saw her eyes blink. I immediately backed away, my heart racing. Something in that house felt alive, as if I wasn't really alone. Then I heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from somewhere upstairs. I froze. The sound continued, a slow, continuous dragging, as if someone or something was moving up there, completely ignoring my presence. "Get out," I thought, but my feet wouldn't move. The adrenaline mixed with fear kept me rooted to the ground, and before I could decide to leave, something else happened. A faint murmur, almost like a whisper, echoed through the house, followed by a child's laughter. That was enough to snap me out of the trance. I ran toward the door and left that house as fast as I could, without looking back. In the nights that followed, I had nightmares. I dreamed of the doll in the display case, her eyes following me, her mouth whispering words I couldn't understand. I would wake up sweating, with the feeling that something was watching me from the darkness. The dolls from Mr. Antonio's house seemed to have infiltrated my mind, and I couldn't shake that feeling. Then, strange things started happening in my own house. Small objects began to disappear. At first, they were insignificant things, a spoon here, a book there. But then, the events became more sinister. One day, I came back from the market and found a cloth doll sitting in the middle of my living room. A doll I had never seen before. She was small, with brown braided hair, and wore a light blue dress. She was in perfect condition, which was strange, considering I hadn't brought any dolls with me. Immediately, I thought of Donna Celia. Maybe she had left it as a macabre joke after the story she told me. But when I asked her, she categorically denied it. Her face went pale when she heard about the doll. "You shouldn't have gone to that house," she said, with a seriousness I had never seen before. "Mr. Antonio's dolls. They say they have a life of their own." From that day on, the doll's presence in my house became increasingly unsettling. No matter where I left her, she always seemed to reappear in different places. Once, I put her in the hallway closet, only to find her sitting on my bed that night. Another time, I threw her in the trash, but the next day, there she was, back on the kitchen table. I started hearing things at night. Scratches on the walls, whispers in the dark. And every time I woke up in the middle of the night, the doll was closer to my bed, her black eyes gleaming in the faint moonlight streaming through the window. I no longer knew if I was losing my mind or if something was truly haunting my house. Then, one night, I woke up with a suffocating sensation. My eyes suddenly opened, and there she was, the doll, sitting on my chest, her small cloth arms pressing against my throat. Her eyes seemed alive, and I felt something, a presence, emanating from her. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed. I couldn't scream, I couldn't breathe. She was suffocating me. When I finally managed to free myself, the doll fell to the floor, lifeless. I ran out of the house without looking back. I didn't return until dawn, when I made the decision to move. The doll disappeared, along with the whispers and scratches. But even now, months after leaving that house, I still wake up in the middle of the night with the sensation that she's watching me. Perhaps I brought something from that house, something that will never leave me in peace.